Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I hope everybody did have a good time in the sessions as well as a delicious lunch. I truly get the honor today of welcoming our keynote speaker, Mr. Jeremiah Brown. Jeremiah, also known as the four-year Olympian. Thank you today to our keynote speaker sponsor, Forward Insurance, for making this possible. So, what does it take to adapt to change and achieve your biggest goal? Our guest speaker today wants to help illuminate that path for us. Mr. Jeremiah Brown is one of the few Olympians ever to go from a complete beginner to Olympic medalist in less than 4 years. He is the author of a national best-selling book, The Four-Year Olympian, which recounts his journey and the lessons learned along the way. After the Olympics, he became the leader of the Canadian Olympic Committee's Game Plan program, helping Olympians and Paralympians reinvent themselves after retiring from the sport. These days, when he's not writing or speaking, he likes to share his Olympic medal with Tim Hortons staff in exchange for Timbits. Love some Timbits. Please welcome Mr. Jeremiah Brown.
Did you guys notice how they brought you here for a party, and then the next morning they said, by the way, there's a new code of conduct? Thought that was very interesting. Just might want to keep your heads up the rest of the way here. Okay, so do you guys want to start off with some trivia or a story? Trivia. Story? Trivia? Okay, we'll start off with a quick backstory, and maybe we'll get to some trivia. So I just want to set the scene, so take you back. I'm 18 years old in my second year of business school, and on a crisp autumn day, I leave class to go visit my girlfriend, Amy. Now, Amy and I have been together for 5 years. We're high school sweethearts. I get to her house, I open the door, she's standing in the kitchen. She turns around, the blood is drained from her face, her pupils are dilated wide. She says, Jer, there's something I gotta tell you. She slips her hand into her pocket, she pulls out a piece of plastic, and in the middle is an oval. And inside the oval are two vertical red lines. Don't ruin it for the others if you've been there, all right? Shh. And I'm staring at this contraption, right? I'm thinking, now what could it be? And then with a rush of breath, she tells me the news. Jer, I'm pregnant. And I'm like, did you want to double check? I remember this like tornado of thoughts and my goals, aspirations, dreams, colliding, correcting, or just vanishing altogether. 18 years old, I found out we were going to be parents. Has this happened to anyone else in this room of young professionals? One person. Okay, a couple hesitant acknowledgements over here. Okay, we can commiserate afterwards. I actually expected that kind of response. I was doing a keynote for the liquor division of Loblaws a little while back. Half the hands in the room went up, you know. There might be a correlation between your career choice. Anyways. So I remember 3 weeks are passing, and I'm just brooding over the situation, right? I'm just thinking, oh my God. Finally, I'm back home at my parents' house. I grew up in Cobourg, Ontario. It's my dad's birthday. And I remember I finally worked up the courage to tell my mom the big news, all right? Figure my secret's safe with her. Big mistake. Mom just walks right next door into the living room where my dad is sitting in his easy chair, and he's just opened this iPad that she bought him for his birthday. And he's been swiping, and now he's tapping, and he's elbowing the damn thing. He can't figure out how to make it work. So my mom tells the news, he just explodes. Jeremiah! What were you thinking? And I was like, wasn't doing a lot of that. I mean, and you'll judge me, and that's fine. We were young and in love when we were careless. And now we had to figure out how to be the parents we wanted to be maybe 10 years in the future, but today. So I remember those 9 months passing, all right? Every day, Amy's belly's getting a little bigger. Every day, my courage is getting a little smaller. And then at last, the day arrives. Now, I remember I had just failed this cost accounting exam at university. Anybody take that course? So boring. Do you remember that one? Yeah. So I'm in the base, I'm in Amy's student rental house. I'm in the living room. I got my head into my hands, and Amy's upstairs and in the bedroom, and I'm thinking to myself, this is not how I expected my life to go. And then Amy calls down suddenly from the bedroom. She says, Jer, my water broke. And I'm like, don't worry about it. I'll get you another glass. I come to my senses. I help Amy to the airport. To the airport. No. Clearly been traveling too much. We do a world tour around the. No. I get to the car. After a few hours, her being a hero, our son, Ethan, is born. And this is a picture of our little Michelin man shortly after getting home from the hospital. Yeah, he's a cute, chubby little guy. And despite all the anxiety and all the foreboding leading up to this moment, of course we were truly grateful to have this little guy in our lives. And I'm sure if you reflect on your own life, you might agree that sometimes the greatest gifts in life show up as challenges we don't feel ready for. So Amy and I were a great team. We're trading the baby off between classes, and somehow we get to the other side of university. We've got our degrees in hand, looking into the future. And Ethan's getting older. Here we are celebrating his birthday at Swiss Chalet, playing the Don't Smile game. He sucks at that game, by the way. I don't dress him like a Harvard professor. That's his mom. Anyways, Amy, his mom, she's filming this scene across from us in the booth. And I remember, sitting there, but my mind projecting into the future and feeling the weight of responsibility sort of narrowing that path of possibilities. And then underneath of that, the sense that no matter what happens to us in life, some part of it has to remain a bit of an adventure or a journey of discovery. Now, I don't know what your goal is right now or what it has been, but maybe as I take you through this journey, what would be helpful to think about what that is for you, maybe what you want to accomplish in the next 2, 3, 4 years of your life. I always wanted to be an athlete of some distinction. All right, growing up, I played hockey. I was late to the game, tallest kid on the ice, just tripping over my feet out there every day. So when I got to university, I switched to football. Too skinny. Just got trampled by a herd of buffalo every single day. And then something happened in the summer of 2008 that would change my life forever. I'm back home at my parents' house. It's a hot, humid day. I remember I put Ethan down for his nap, and I escaped the heat in the basement. I flop myself on the couch, and I turn on the TV, and I come across this. It's the Olympic final of the men's 8 rowing event at the Beijing Olympics. Now, I don't know anything about the sport at this time, but I'm instantly mesmerized. There's these 8 lean, strong guys in this long, skinny boat traveling this 2,000-meter race course distance. They look like these automatons, right, executing their functions. And then if you keep watching, it's like, hold on a second, who's that little horse jockey guy in the front of the boat? It's like he's getting a free ride to an Olympic medal or something. Anyways, I'll come back to him. Canada's in the lead. We're holding off those pesky Brits and the Americans. We're charging. I'm cheering them on. Come on, Canada. Ethan wakes up from his nap. I'm like, Amy, you got the boys? She's like, yeah, I got him. I run back just in time to see this. They hold off the field. They win the gold medal for our country. Yeah. Someone else was watching it too. And I remember just standing there transfixed, watching that TV, with chip crumbs on my t-shirt, thinking, what journey have these guys been through to realize a moment like that? What would it take? So a commercial break comes and goes. Okay, now they're stepping onto the podium, dog. They're getting the medals looped around their necks. They're singing our anthem at the top of their lungs. And I start to study their physiques. You see, they've got these awkward, kind of ropey arms and legs. And then I look at my awkward, stringy arms and legs, and I think, how hard could it be? Merrily, 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 gently down the stream. It's about taking a moment in your life, right? And just stepping back in the busyness to say, well, what if? And what would it even look like to begin? So what do? Well, I went to my parents' living room computer and I did some Googling. Now here's the trivia. Does anyone in this room want to guess the odds of any person in this world winning an Olympic gold, silver, or bronze medal in any sport? Just the fundamental odds. Feel free to shout it out. Is it 1 in 1,000? Is it 1 in a million? Any guesses? 1 in a million? Okay, that's good. 1 in a billion. You're giving me too much credibility. Let's walk it back. Okay. Clearly you're on the sales side of the business, not actuarial. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you, that's a great guess. Anyone else? Maybe one more? One more guess? 1 in 5 million. Okay, we got a good range there. Well, I Googled this morning just to double check, and depending on your source, I got about 1 in 22 million. Whew. So I went to my computer. Luckily I didn't Google what are the odds. I Googled Canadian Olympic rowing team location. 4,000 kilometers across the country from where I live in Victoria, British Columbia. So the first order of business is I got to convince Amy, my partner, mother of my child, to move halfway across the world for my pipe dream. Now, what would you say to your significant other? This guy's just shaking his head. Abort. Well, here's a tip. you don't tell them the truth, okay? All right, that would be a disaster, but you can reframe things. I said, Amy, I found a bank job out in Victoria, British Columbia, TD Bank. What if we went out there for, 4 years? And then we can come back and everything will be fine. Let's go on an adventure, ocean air in your lungs. She said, no. It's like, oh, don't give up, you only just began. I said, Amy, what if we do go out there for 4 years, and then for the next 15 years, you can decide where we live? Eventually she said, all right, let's do it. And 2 months after watching that moment on TV, I was on this airplane with my little family to start this job and to take my moonshot, go after this dream. And what I want to do in the time that we have here today is I want to take you through 3 or 4 stories and lessons about the human side of transformation, of going through change, of staying on the offense mentally, and navigating those psychological pitfalls and those emotional traps that we're all liable to face on that journey. Hopefully I can leave you with some things, personally or professionally, that are going to help you moving away from today. All right, so I get out to Victoria. The first lesson I learned on this journey very early on is that if you want to find out what your potential is in some area of your life, you got to find a way to build outside accountability into your path. We all need a coach or mentor in our corners. So this is Doug White. He was my first rowing coach. Did a little Googling when I got out there. Turns out Doug coached all around the world at the highest levels, just happened to make his home in Victoria. And after a brief email exchange, he agreed to meet me at the lake at a cafe where all the rowers congregated between rows. And I remember getting to the cafe, opening the doors, there's Doug sitting off in a corner booth, cradling a hot cup of coffee, the steam just rising into his face, just exuding credibility. I slip into the booth across from Doug, and we get to talking. Now, I've never had a man look so deliberately into my eyes before, like he's searching my soul for my raison d'etre. And at one point, he stops my blathering, he says, Jeremiah, why are you here? What do you want from this sport? I start rocking back and forth in my seat. I'm thinking, this guy's gonna laugh me out of here. He's gonna tell me I can't do it. Finally, I just blurred across the table. I said, Doug, I wanna go to the Olympics and I wanna win a gold medal. And then I held my breath. And the man did not laugh. He didn't even blink. Just looks at his watch, looks back at me, he says, well, shit, we don't have a lot of time. We better get to work. And here in this innocent moment, this man, by virtue of his credibility, who could have set me back months, if not years, instead came along and solidified that what I wanted to do was possible and that we would do it together. If there's something, if you want to chart a course through this bloody uncertainty of this pandemic that's created, you got to get it out of your head and in front of someone who can help you realize the path to get there. We often think it's our thoughts that lead to our actions. Probably more appropriate to say your thoughts lead to words and an affirmation from a credible third party, which then leads to a safer beginning. Okay, so I've got my coach. Journey begins in earnest, or so I think. I meet Doug at the boathouse the following Saturday morning, first day of on-water training. We're standing in the boat bay. We're watching the rowers take their boats down to the dock one by one. Doug crosses his arms. He says, Jeremiah, here's what to expect. You're going to have to fly this plane while you're still building it. First year, it's going to suck. You're going to fail a lot. I'm going to ask you to trust me. And he said, in that second year, it's still going to suck. You're going to have breakthroughs, but they'll be few and far between. I'm going to ask you to trust yourself. And then he said, in that third year and a half, if everything goes to plan and you make it onto the national rowing team, the training is going to kick your butt and they will not wait for you. And then he said, how's that all sound? I said, well, it sounds like it's going to suck. He said, that's good, Jeremiah. It's important to be realistic. Now put this on and meet me down at the dock. He throws me this awkward piece of spandex called a unisuit. Woo! It's not one of those shows, lady. So that was last night. So I never worn one of these things before, but it was February in Victoria, still quite cold, so I had my fitted leggings, my fitted long-sleeve shirt. I went to the locker room, I strapped this on over top as best I could. I was like, what the heck, this doesn't look right. There's bunches of clothing sticking out. I come walking out of the locker room around the corner of the boathouse, and then to my horror, I scan the pavilion. All the other rowers are wearing their unisuits underneath their leggings and their long-sleeve fitted shirts. And I look like an 80s fitness instructor, just ready to lead a class. My face turns as bright red as this garment, I kid you not. Doug's looking down at me from the dock. He's like, Jeremiah, get down here. Why am I taking a chance on this punk? I get down to the dock. He's arranged for me to row a one-person rowing boat. Okay, they're 18 inches wide, 26 feet long, tippy as hell. He says, all right, Jeremiah, you're going to get in the boat. I'm going to push you clear of the dock by your port side oar. Whatever you do, don't let go of those oars. It's like, okay, here we go. Get in the boat. It's like, okay, it's pretty tippy. He starts to push my port side oar clear of the dock, out to the water. And I get to thinking, okay, self-talk, Olympian in 4 years. I think I can do this. Port side oar clears the dock, and I immediately go tumbling into the water. And you knew it was happening. So begins weeks of just swimming more than rowing. Get down in the mornings before work at 5:30 in the morning. I get in that boat, I'd fall out starboard, I'd dolphin kick my way back in, somersault out port side, splashing all around. People walking around the lakeside trail in the mornings would stop in their tracks and watch this beautiful interpretive dance of a million mistakes unfolding on the water every moment. And with the water dripping from my nose, I'm trying, and I'm trying, and I'm trying again. And here, my friends, when any notion of how you thought your journey is going to go is displaced with the cold grip of reality, this is actually where we have our true beginning. Remember in those early days, I can only describe it as a sense of shame. That's what I felt. It's too late for me. My opportunity has passed me by. I'm a father, I have this job, I have responsibilities. Quit being an idiot, get on with your life. This sense of shame that I didn't belong, that I had no right to the dream. Well, I worked with Doug, and we got to work. And true to Doug's words, things were pretty bad that first year. I just want to put you in the perspective of rowing one of these things, for those of you not familiar with rowing. What's unique about rowing is that we're traveling forward, and yet we're facing backwards. So it's a wonderful metaphor for life, because each of us in this room, we can see the decisions we've made. Of course, some circumstances outside of your control, but you more or less understand how you've arrived right here, right now, all the while propelling yourselves into the future, unable to see the obstacles that await. Rowing is life. Okay, so true to Doug's words, things did get a lot worse before they got better. And I thought I'd just bring some graphs. Don't worry, I won't get too academic on you, but I just want to introduce expectations versus reality. So what happens when you start to plot out a new journey, a new big goal that you go after? Well, we were in the lower left of the quadrant. There's our goal. Up and to the right, we create this linear path in our minds, don't we? From where we are to where we want to get to. We know we shouldn't do it, but it's what we do. And in reality, your experience is going to more closely resemble the traditional learning curve, which looks more like this. Those first weeks and months with Doug, I must have hit 20 of those floating buoys on the water, fell in every single time. One day I was so far off course, a fisherman caught his hook on my rigger. The guy starts trying to reel me in. He's having a great day, me not so much. And don't even get me started on the Canada geese. That is a stubborn bird. They form like an infantry line across the lake. They don't move, they just honk at your ants like a turf war. I must have smoked 5 of those suckers. They're a hardy bird. I got the worst of it. So you're going along, and sooner or later we all hit this gap between where you expected to be at a given point in time and where you find yourself. And what happens when you get to this point psychologically? Well, you project a new line of expectation out in the future, right? You're always auto-correcting. You see that gap is ever widening based on today's evidence. Your heart cries out to your mind, for the love of mercy, release me from this burden. Well, congratulations. You've just hit your first exit point. These first exit points are almost always an illusion. They're a decoy. They're not real. It's the convergence of your emotions and your frustrations commingling with that loss of objectivity, conspiring to have you quit too soon. Now, here's the power of having a coach alongside. A coach is there fundamentally to take you further or faster than you could go on your own. If they're not doing one of those two things, you don't have a coach. But of all the things that a coach will do for you, or a mentor, in my mind, it's at this point. They have that relationship with you, they recognize when you hit it, and they help you go a little further, and they're not doing the work for you. But they're contesting your loss of objectivity until you get past that peak state of overwhelm, and you start moving again, and you start to hit that inflection point where now your rate of progress does start to catch up with the investment. There's always a lag, isn't there? And then we have that sweet elixir of momentum at our backs, the most precious resource in the world. These exit points are an opportunity to recommit, to actively recommit. Take in the new information. What do we got? New regulations coming down our throat, merger and acquisition activity through the wazoo. The job's always changing, fine. Take a moment to embrace, accept, and recommit, right? For those of you who are married, you don't get married once. You get married once and then you choose to stay married throughout the years, or not. But let's be honest about it. These exit points, recognition is half the battle, and you got to recognize it within yourself. It's a psycho-emotional state. Okay, so I'm training with Doug, and every morning he's following me up and down the lake in his tin boat with that gurgling outboard motor, blinding me with his headlamp. He followed me close enough to offer an encouraging word once in a while, but also far enough away to allow me to go through this journey of perseverance, where you're layering deeper inside of yourself, asking, what does this really mean to you? And what I found on this journey early on is that the answer's got to be something greater than our own blind ambition. It can't be about the Olympic medal, about the money, about the status. It's just not going to get us there when we hit those obstacles. We've got to anchor it to something that's already strong in our lives. You know, for me as a young father, I wanted to be the kind of dad to show his little guy what it meant to chase after something in life with everything you got. To be able to say years later, looking back, hey, maybe I failed, but this is how I put myself in play. That was my anchor. It was this parallel thing, first principles kind of way of thinking. What is that for you? When we're so often easily letting ourselves down, when it's so hard to treat ourselves like someone we want to see do well versus how we treat our friends and family, what is that anchor that you can hold on to that's going to get you through that? That was key part of this journey. All right, so I worked with Doug for 2 years. He was a kind, like a father figure to me, really sweet guy. He took me from raw ingredients to an invitation at last from the national rowing team to join them full time. It's like watershed moment. Oh, man, I remember walking into my bank office job. I was an analyst in commercial banking, not very good at my job, not horrible, but I'll be honest, not very good. And I remember there's my boss's office in the corner. I open the door, I say, Rob, I'm out of here. I'm going to chase the dream. And I'm not looking back. And then I looked back. And I said, Rob, could we make this a leave of absence? I think I'm going to need my benefits. They were very good to me. Now, this is where things get interesting. I mean, I was walking up a volcano that was about to blow. I had no idea what was going to hit me. From training once on my own in the mornings with Doug to now training 3 to 5 hours a day on the water, your heart rate pushed to 190 beats per minute or higher, mind and body breaking down under the training load. Got to the point where you would enter what in power aerobic sports is called the training fog, where the 18 workouts of last week are sitting in your bones and your tissues so that when you start first thing Monday morning, you're already just exhausted. It's called allostatic load, right? You're bringing the stress from last week and it's just right there on Monday. The man who pushed us to these extremes was this guy. Now I want you to look at that smile and ask yourself, would you trust this man? Kind of looks like the Grinch, right? His name's Mike Spracklin, head coach of the Canadian Olympic rowing team, a British man, okay, originally from Great Britain, got pushed out of his homeland for pushing his athletes too hard, and we got him in Canada. Just our luck. It took me 2 days to realize that I hated this man. And I was not the only one. I mean, he had this ironclad vision for the path to the podium, and he was almost like the interpersonal skills were just not there. And he created this incongruency inside of you of like, oh, I respect this guy, to this day, one of the winningest coaches in the history of the sport. But man, I can't stand this guy. And you know, you had to hold that incongruency like right in your sternum. And instead of waiting for it to resolve, you had to move forward with it. Mike, day in and day out, he would follow us up and down the lake. We would row through snow, sleet, rain, whatever. And he had a boat. It was all covered in a canopy of canvas. He even had zip-up windows and a little space heater in the front to keep his toes warm. And sometimes the front windshield would fog up, and there he was. He'd wipe clear a swath with his hand. He was holding the PA. Keep rowing. It was maddening. And I learned that the other national team athletes been around for a while. They had a nickname for Mike's boat. They called it the Pope-mobile. I thought, okay, I can kind of see the resemblance, Pope-mobile. And then one day I understood. Now, you have to keep in mind, I was so far out of contention, it was bloody heartbreaking. I was rowing in the wake of the main training group, just trying to keep up. And I remember one day on a Saturday morning at the south end of the lake, I'm slumped over my boat, starving for some word of encouragement. And at last, Mike comes puttering up in the Pope-mobile. A glimmer of hope. He unzips one of the plastic windows, the flap falls open, he sticks out his head. He says, "Jerry, are you tired? Don't you want to be a champion? And I swear to God, I wanted to grab him by the throat and drown him in the water. Now I understood Pope-mobile to protect him from his athletes. It all made sense. Now, kidding aside, this would be my competitive advantage. Because as those months wore on, I could see that some of these athletes who had far more experience than me, been rowing for 10, 15 years through the NCAA system, the Harvards, the University of Washington, the Cal Bears, and they had tremendous levels of success. But you could see that they wanted to take what had worked there and just sort of plug it into this new Olympic paradigm, and albeit more, but just do more of the same and have it work all the same. But when you met a guy like Mike Spracklen, you were going to be transformed, physically or mentally. It didn't matter what you had done in the past. And so you could see some of these guys, like they had their foot on the dock of what had worked. They had one foot in the boat that was fast leaving, and they couldn't get that friggin' other leg in the boat. And you could see their mindset just being ripped apart. And when you're in the first year or two of a transformational journey, that mental fortitude is like the most precious resource that you have. At his core, Mike, he had the finisher mindset. And you're being pushed and you're being pushed. Remember, he's actually given us the gift in the form of a question. With your hands shredded from training 5 hours a day, are you all in? Are you committed? And what Mike understood probably better than any of us athletes is there's a night and day difference between 95% commitment and 100% commitment, whereby that 5% that you leave just in the back of your mind just eats away and erodes that 95% of you that has showed up. 100% commitment. Are you all in? And so at its core, Mike had, what I describe as the finisher mindset. He understood the psychology of going through something to the end and what it requires. Let's say you've gotten through those first exit points, right? And of course, you're still hitting them along the way. But now you got that momentum at your back. There's another point I want to point out to you, is right there, where now your rate of progress starts to plateau, or how you think and how you feel about your rate of progress starts to plateau. And what do you do when you get to this point? Do you look back at the beginning of your journey and say, my goodness, how far I've come, good for me? No. Recency bias takes hold of your mind. And so even as you get so very close to your goal, somehow it feels like you've never been further away. This is one of the greatest deceptions you will encounter on pursuing potential. This idea that that last 5% or 2% of the effort, when it's feeling like 80% of the entire effort to get there, that it's not worth it. That marginal gain. It's a trick. You've got the dark angels of tedium and toil and boredom whispering in your ear saying, it's not worth it, it's not worth it. And you got to respond actively, say, it is worth it. This is the path. It's never going to be what you thought it was. So when you find out what it is, hang in there a little longer. And with your psychology pulling you this way, you've got to go in the direction of the learning. Every big transformational journey, every career path through multiple years is going to be as much about what you learn along the way as those KPIs that you can measure every week, every month, every quarter, every year. So what happened? Some of these guys, they started to quit. Couldn't believe it. Well, not quit, I guess. They went to pursue other paths. They would get that job, they get the graduate degree, all valid paths. But there comes a point in time where we got to say, okay, this is it, right? This is where I'm willing to go a little further than I've ever been willing to go in the past. That's where that fertile ground of growth lives. All right, so I'm rowing, and honestly, it looks pretty hopeless. And then one day, opportunity strikes. One of the guys in the top men's 8 boat gets injured. And the following morning, Mike comes to the boathouse. He says, Jerry, World Cup in Italy next month, you're in. Be ready. I don't feel ready. I'm terrified, actually. But this might be my only chance. I've got to seize it. So we're on an airplane to Italy, and we get over there in beautiful northern Italy, and here we are rehearsing our sprint sequence in the final days before this first World Cup race. Now, in our sprint sequence, the last 100 meters of this 2,000-meter race, we elevate our stroke rate. We're trying to cross that finish line at maximum velocity. Now, what do you think happens to the speed of the boat when we initiate our sprint? You expect that the speed of the boat goes faster. Yeah, that's a logical answer. Actually, the speed of the boat stays the same. Why? Well, the sprint is only a psychological tool to allow the athletes to maintain the pace they've set during the middle 1,000 meters of the race. So in rowing, you don't actually so much beat your competition as you do outlast and out-survive the competition. And what a wonderful metaphor for life, and again, what we've gone through the last couple of years. The sense that sometimes surviving is thriving. Sometimes that's very much a part of the high-performance journey, even though in your moment it will feel so foreign to you. Sometimes surviving is thriving. I don't know, how the stress of the last couple of years has affected each of you. I mean, we had a wonderful introduction by one of our sponsors about her story and journey, and we all share one of those, don't we? But we do ourselves an injustice if we think that we always got to have that sense of momentum at our backs. When if you look at the course of your life, I'm sure you might agree that you've spent more of your energy building and manufacturing that momentum than you have being the beneficiary of it. Is that fair? Sometimes surviving is thriving, and that's okay. And that lesson was never more imprinted in me than during what happened next at this first ever World Cup race. Sitting on the start line, the horn goes, we take off the line, and I execute what in rowing is called the fly and die race profile, where I'm putting all my energy into the first 500 meters of the race so that with 1,000 meters to go, I've got nothing left. I am a spent piston on an 8-cylinder engine. I don't know if you can see here, my friends. I've tried to highlight it for you. I'm almost falling out of the boat here every single stroke. My teammates, more adapted physiologically and mentally to this level of strain, they're pulling me down to the race course. And as my body is falling apart, I'm just ridden with guilt. Because in rowing, if you put your oar in a little too early or a little too late, it makes it so much heavier for everyone else in the boat. And you don't know where it's coming from. So there's an incredible amount of trust in this sport. I just want to pause it here just to clarify something. My friends, this is not a smile on my face. Right? This is the look of someone pushed so far beyond their comfort zone that they have entered trauma. I'm not going to mince words with you. This was a traumatic period in my life. And there's this common ad just floating around out there, like it's a very HR type concept. No offense to HR, but like if we could just straddle the line of high performance is like meeting that sort of that peak stressor, but not quite going into failure. That's nonsense. If you're pushing to your limit, if you're trying to really find out what your potential is, you're going to go all the way into failure. You're going to have to find a way to pick yourself back up off the floor. So I remember after this race, just sitting in that locker room, I had almost like a panic attack, anxiety racing through my brain, ruminating negative thoughts, feelings of helplessness, of despair, powerlessness. And I remember just thinking to myself, I don't know what discomfort lies ahead on this journey, but if I keep dwelling on it, I'm never going to get there. And so I adopted this mindset that I like to call optimistic resignation. It's the most powerful tool I know to get through mental or physical suffering in the moment. I mean, are you dejected today? Are you down on your luck? Are you a little miserable? This is for you. Optimistic resignation is saying to yourself, okay, I can't control all the variables that are out there, but I'm going to maintain a private relationship with my own progress and commit that it's more important that I be in this thing, that I keep the promise to that former version of me that chose to be here and see it through, even than where I may end up at the end of this journey. And it's a lesson that was taught to me by Doug White, my first rowing coach, during one of my early exit points. Standing on the dock, just dejected yet again, Doug looks at me and says, Jer, I know it doesn't look possible, but that doesn't mean it's not possible for you. He said, ask yourself this. Can you commit to the next 18 months until the Olympic Games? Can you make the timeline more important than the goal itself? Because if you can do that, then you start to allow for possibility. It's a subtle mindset shift, but it changed everything about how I pursued this goal and every big goal I pursued in my life since. It's the reason why I'm speaking to you right now. And simply put, optimistic resignation is anchoring your mind to the timeline, to say in that moment of despair, of overwhelm. There's two definitions of resignation. There's the resignation we're familiar with, which is to quit, to resign, but there's also another one, which is to take a sober look at reality. It's not about positive thinking, it's about being realistic and giving yourself a space to say, okay, sometimes hope is a strategy. Sometimes committing to being in this thing without knowing what the outcome is an effective tool for getting through those hard times. A sense of indomitable hope, optimistic resignation. So after this race, we came in 5th, by the way, unacceptable for the culture that Mike created on the team. And after the race, he would always have 2 meetings, one at the dock when we were fresh off the water. He just wanted to get a quick take, what we thought went wrong in the race or what we had to do different. And then a few hours later, when our thoughts had settled, he'd have another meeting back at his hotel suite. And he was doing that, 2 meetings, talking about the same thing, trying to triangulate as a leader the path forward. I remember sitting in his hotel suite, some of us on ottomans and the carpet. He's going one by one by one. Now, have you ever been in a meeting where you've got this answer all prepared and the boss gets to you and he asks you something different? Well, Mike got to me and he said, Jerry, why do you make such a pain face when you row? Are you trying to encourage the competition? I'm like, Mike, I can't control what's going on in my face. I'm putting everything I have into the face of the blade on my oar. And then he responds with this gem. He says, Jerry, if someone were to take a knife and stab me in the heart, I would simply close my eyes, fall backwards, and die. But I would not make a face. Have you worked with someone like this? There's a gift in there, right? Test of your commitment. Now, kidding aside, in the moment, I was mortified because I thought that I lost the trust of these teammates I was working so hard to earn. You don't get any respect just by showing up. And in sport, we have a high trust, high conflict environment. Like, we're on such a fast trajectory to try to get to that Olympic podium. We don't have time to harbor small disagreements, reservations. We usually work it out on the water, it's taken care of before we get back to the dock. So a couple minutes later, I walk back the hallway down to my hotel room, and a couple minutes later, I get a knock on the door. It's 2 of my teammates. And I'm expecting to get a strip torn off me, right? I open the door, they say something else. They said, Jer, we know it looks really bad on the film, but you're gonna be part of the equation that helps us get back onto that Olympic podium next year at the Olympics. Whatever you do, don't stop now. And I cannot tell you the light that wanted to shoot out of every pore in my body to hear that I had not lost the trust of these guys, but that by throwing myself wholeheartedly into this thing, that they could see even better than I could, that I was making progress. I was so mired by my own emotion. It veiled me. I didn't have a clear picture, but they could see. And in that moment, those words meant everything to me. Now here's the funny part. 2 years later, Malcolm and Gabe are their names. I said, do you guys realize the power your words had on me in that moment? You know what they said? No. But you look like you're going to hurt yourself or something. Put you on a 24-hour watch. It meant nothing to them. But in that moment, it meant everything to me. And when you're going through that transformation journey, your transformation is never yours alone. I have one simple definition of a high-performing team. It's a standard that no one of us can maintain all the time, but that each and every one of us must contribute to some of the time in our own way. So it's pulling you forward. And in that moment, these guys, they changed the whole trajectory of this path, whereby the year leading up to the Olympics is the hardest training I've ever done in my life, but in some sense, it was easier, right, with this pull dynamic of being part of this thing. All right, so we get back to Canada, and we're training, we're really hard. We've got 1 year left. I remember Mike, he's just cranking the dial and cheating reason. And one meeting, I just erupt. I'm just like, Mike, the human body does not evolve as fast as your training program. He just looks at me and says, oh, Jerry, the body lies. Your mind can will it onward. This guy. So we get to the Olympics, all right? There's the coaches leading the way, the teammates setting the standard, the family, everyone supporting you. The Olympics is all about glitz and glamour and grandeur. It's designed to tease your focus as an athlete. And we get out in our first race, we're ranked 3rd in the world, and we all execute what in rowing is called the fly and die race profile, which I've introduced you to. We're all trying to be heroes in slightly different ways at different times. Halfway through this race, all the other crews move past us. They leave us in their wake. We came in last by 13 seconds. The only thing worse would have been if we just flipped the boat outright. It was a disaster. I remember after the race, put the boat away, and I'm walking across the pavilion back to the team tent, just stunned and struck by shock at what just happened. A reporter from CTV, she comes running up with her cameraman behind her. She says, Jeremiah, what happened out there, and where do you go from here? And I'm like, do you have a suggestion? That's how I'm feeling. Outwardly, I give her the most cliched athlete interview you've ever heard in your life. I said, the boy's just gonna come out here in the second race, tighten up a few things, everything's gonna be fine, just fine. Oh, shit. I remember the pressure. When that pressure is physical, you can feel it in your body feels heavier. That night we have a meeting to dissect what went wrong. And it's at the boardroom in the hotel. And I remember I could see the heat signatures of my teammates' forearms lifting off the table. The stress is palpable in the room. And as Mike goes one by one dissecting what went wrong in the race, his voice starts to crack under the pressure. We're losing him. And boy, in these moments, do we ever expect our leaders to be there for us. But they're only human, right? And I remember looking at my teammates' faces and thinking, just as I had to buffer my belief and my courage in this moment, I depended on each and every one of those guys to do the same thing for me, or it all falls apart. Rowing is the ultimate team sport. I remember we had 2 choices, very clearly. One, no one would expect us at this level to come back from this. You don't bomb an Olympic heat and then come back for a medal. It doesn't happen. We'll go home, we'll row the next race, it'll be it, it'll be over, we'll go home, we'll try to forget about this for the rest of our lives. Or the second option is to say, we wouldn't be here without this crazy British guy. And we have trained as hard or harder than anyone else in the world. We belong there. Let's go bail him out and let's go do it for each other. And all along, even though Mike was this, a bit of a grinder, you could tell that what he wanted as a leader was us to realize the best in ourselves. Now, Mike, talking about leadership, made a decision between this race and the next race that few other coaches in the world would have the courage to make. On our day off of rest, he took us at 5 p.m. back on the Olympic race course, and he made us do 500-meter race pace pieces, like a full-blown workout. I remember just cutting through the water, and at great risk, because we were certainly going to be 1% more fatigued going into the next race. In an Olympic sport where 0.1% can make the difference between being on the Olympic podium or not. Why? Because he knew it was more important that our psychology be where it needed to be, even at the cost of us being a little more fatigued. We had to feel the speed of the boat cutting through the water. We had to feel our legs engaging, our muscles flexing, the wind cutting past your ear. We had to remind ourselves that we belonged there. We had trained as hard or harder than anyone else in the world. We did belong there. As leaders, it's so easy to make the decision in the moment where you're projecting in the future and in the postmortem, no one will look at this and say I made the wrong decision. It's defensible. But there are moments on the leadership journey where you, as the future leaders of this industry in your brokerages, you're going to have to say, you're going to have to listen to your gut, and you're going to have to make a decision, knowing that it puts you at risk. That's the cost of leadership. And that's what Mike did for us in that moment. He put his job at risk. So we go into the next race. It's called the repechage in rowing. The top 4 crews go to the final, and they get to race for the medals. Everyone else goes home. So it's do or die. I remember we're charging down the race course. We're riding that red line, as Mike calls it, where you're going as hard as you can, but not harder than you can. It's this infinitesimally small difference. We're trading noses with the Brits all the way down the race course, and at the end, the Brits managed to beat us, but we come in second, so we've survived. And I remember looking across the water at the Brits. They had their legs out of the boat. They wanted a psychological advantage going into the final, so they used every last gear. And I remember thinking, oh, I got one more gear. And if I'm feeling this way, my teammates are also feeling this way. And I just remember thinking, oh, you Brits, we're coming for you. It's just from the cusp of defeat to the brink of victory. So this sets up the Olympic final. I want to try to put you on the start line with me. I remember the night before, I'm lying in my hotel bed. I'm trying to count the stucco bits, trying to fall asleep, impossible. And then I fall asleep, and it's like 2 seconds later, I'm awake. You ever have one of those? We get down to the breakfast room. We're eating just like this, white table round with a white linen cloth, working into our breakfast. No words need to be exchanged. Everything through the eyes. Are you with me? Are you with me? We get into the team van. We take the van to the race course, open up the van door. Huge roar erupts from the crowd already cheering on. The race has begun that day. I remember the shiver going up my spine, thinking, oh my God, this is it. Now, before every international race, we always have the same pre-race routine. If you've got a high-pressure moment coming up in your life, you want to make sure everything leading up to that moment is as routine as possible to quiet the subconscious mind. So 4 of us were on rowing machines, 4 of us are on stationary bikes, working our heart rates up to about 140 beats per minute until a smooth film, the sweat covers our bodies. Next, we go face down on the massage therapy table. He karate chops our arms and legs like a Japanese drummer. Digga, 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 digga. You stand up, and it feels like a floodplain of blood oozing through your body, and it's like, okay, you're ready for your best performance. We get into the boat bay. I remember the Dutch crew just 24 feet away in the next boat bay. I remember this feeling of fear all around. Some of it our own, some of it theirs. Underneath of it, that whisper of courage. Sometimes it's just a small whisper. Mike, he takes our lanyards off one by one. He's talking. I don't remember everything on account of the pressure, but I remember he says, those guys out there, they'll give their lives to get on the podium. What are you prepared to do? I'm like, well, everything except die. Give the lanyards off to Mike. We take the boat, slip it off the rack, split the difference, 4 on port, 4 on starboard, walk in lockstep down to the dock, put the boat in the water. The warm-up usually takes 45 minutes. Feels like time is accelerating. You're helpless to stop it. Next thing I know, we're back into the starting gates one last time, and this is it. It's going to be about 5.5 minutes for the rest of your life. These moments that define us, right? Choosing in the moment to stay with it, to stay in it. I remember the sound of the water lapping up against the side of the boat. I remember in lane 6, these Aussies, the Aussie crew, the Australians, they look like rugby players, big muscles, and start giving out war cries, slapping their arms and legs. I'm like, Jesus, that's not part of my routine. But you damn sure I'm going to give my thighs a little wiggle just in case. The starting announcer begins announcing the crews in order from lanes 1 to 6. It sounds like this. The Netherlands, Great Britain, United States of America, Canada. It feels like time is slowing down. And then boom, the horn goes, we blast off the line, legs down again and again. The sound of water erupting behind oars is deafening. There's 48 athletes in this event, 6 of those coxswains in front of the boat. They're mic'd up and they're speaking to us. We have speakers throughout the boat, every 5 seconds, rallying us around our plan of execution. 120 pounds, but just as important as any of us big suckers in that boat. 500 meters in, we're in 3rd place behind the Aussies, behind the Germans and the Brits, and nipping at our heels are the Aussies, the Dutch, and the Americans. It's going to be the closest final in the history of this event at the Olympic Games, but we don't know that yet. We are 8 minds and bodies coming together to row as one. 1,000 meters into the race, the lactic acid is burning you from the inside out. The only thing that keeps you going at this stage of this race is the knowledge that your brothers in the boat have not stopped rowing yet. And you're even a little pissed off about it. And somewhere in the world, some jerk is lying on a couch with chips watching this on TV thinking, it all looks pretty easy. Let me tell you, it's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. But it was also the most human of moments. It's about hope and fear and courage and despair and persistence and belief. 1,500 meters in now, we got the grandstands on either end, on the other side. The roaring crowd, thousands of people. You can feel your ribcage vibrating from the noise. We're still in 3rd place, like 10 strokes to go. Brian says, boys, we're down 1 seat from the Brits for silver, 1 seat from the Brits for silver. I'm like, Brian, bronze medal sounds pretty damn good right about now. And in the last 10 strokes, we managed just to push through past the Brits. We're charging towards the finish line. And in the grandstands is my dad filming this on that iPad he finally figured out how to use. So I'm going to play the broadcast. It's going to switch and see if you can catch it when it switches to my dad's iPad. Here we go.
The great Rangers Walk over there and tell the boys you're moving. You can get them in the last 20 strokes. Here comes Great Britain. Here comes Germany. And here comes Canada. Final meters in the men's 8. Germany trying to hold on. And now the Canadian crew firing through.
Go Canada! Go Canada! Go Canada!
All right, so maybe he's still learning how to use the iPad after all. Is that not everyone's dad ever? Picture your dad screaming. So we crossed the finish line. You know, people always ask, what was that moment like? I mean, the pain, like you're on the verge of unconsciousness, but your body's far more resilient than you think. You feel like you're gonna die, you could probably go for another half an hour and then you'll die. You know, after 15 or 20 seconds, the pain starts to lift. You come back to consciousness, and it settles, I'll be honest, on a feeling of relief of all the things that could have gone wrong, to have it be up to us in the end, to have our shot. You know, it's all you can hope for, is to have your shot. And we certainly had that. And then it settles on this place of gratitude. I mean, to share in an experience like this with these 8 other guys, not to mention the team behind the team, there is nothing sweeter than a team win, is there? It's one of the most sublime experiences in life. So Will, actually, just to point out, he's at a World Cup in Poland right now, competing for Canada in the men's 8. His 4th Olympics coming up. The freckled chap in front of me in the boat. I used to look at a particular constellation of freckles while I was slowly going unconscious to keep my bearing. There's the Big Dipper. So, yeah, what a moment. You know, it's not necessarily the time we spend with each other, but the adversity we go through together that forms those bonds that'll last a lifetime. So here we are walking onto the podium dock. I'm pumping up my fists at my son, Ethan. And guess who's holding him up by his armpits? Amy. Remember her? My partner, my mother child. And all along, you know, she was there making this dream possible. Right? Any of us who accomplish anything of significance, we're standing on the shoulders of others, aren't we? And as you can see, Ethan's a bit of a ham, but he was there for me all the way too. So this is the moment that I was watching a similar moment to this in my parents' humid basement on TV, inspired me to begin, and there I was 4 years later, standing with these teammates, experiencing it for myself. It felt like stepping through a threshold, time to reflect, recharge, and then begin anew on this unending journey of life and the big goals that fill it with meaning. So a couple things. I know I run around and tell a lot of stories. I just want to bring it back to close. Set that anchor. What is that anchor for you? I've given up trying to be my own best friend. For some reason, I'm just too negative to myself. You got to transplant the investment of your effort into something else that you're not going to give up on. That's the way to do it. And then mind the gap. They're always emerging. You know what's coming. Recognition is half the battle. When it hits you, those exit points, it feels like you're the only one, but we're in this together. This is the path, this is the journey. And then once you've done that, setting that time horizon. For me, it was 18 months of up-top, utter commitment. It wasn't 4 years. What is it for you going out of this room today? Is it 6 months? Do you need to get through the next year? Are you building? Do you have a 4-year horizon in your mind? Great. Solidify it. It's a superpower. It's a super weapon. Because you can't go through the failures day to day asking yourself the question, moment to moment, am I in or am I out? Choose and go. And then once you've done that, you can employ the finisher mindset. Man, that last 1%, I remember even the warm-up of the Olympic final, trying to get better, watching the German crew thinking, how is it possible they're rowing that well? Always trying to get better, pushing. It's more important that we see things through, even to the failure or the outcome that we set out to achieve. We don't want to get lost in that land of middle maybe, of years looking back with regret. There's nothing there for us. Go all the way. Finish. All right, so to close, this is the image These are the Olympic mountains across the Juan de Fuca Strait in Victoria. And every day coming back from training, no matter how broken in body or spirit, I remember seeing these mountains, they were a reminder to me to have a strength of resolve that at some point is immovable, like those Olympic mountains across the Juan de Fuca Strait. So whatever challenges you're facing, 4 years from today, looking back on right now, what do you want to be proud of? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to take from the passive and make it active and manifest it in the world? I promise you, you will surprise yourself. All right, that's all I have for you. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much, guys. Thank you. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you so much.
Get my... Oh, I get to relive the moment? You bet I'm saying yes. Go Canada! Yes! Whoa, shoot. Thank you for that. Joe, this is a good dynamic going on here. Sandals?
Thank you, Jeremiah, for that passionate presentation. Watching you with your drive and your energy. If you ever decide to change career paths, the insurance industry will welcome you. We'll make you the 4-year broker, no problem. But seriously, everybody, please join me in another round of applause for Jeremiah. That was amazing. Thank you. Okay, we are now going to move on to the Around the World sessions. There are 4 sessions happening today. Everyone is going to have a chance to attend each of these 30-minute sessions with subject matter experts, and the topics covered include: what is an MGA and how do I use them? Delivering difficult messages. Let's talk business interruption insurance. That kind of sounds like a rap song. Let's talk business interruption. Get noticed at work, be proactive. If I can ask all of you to take a look at your name badge, which I don't have on, it indicates which session you will start with. Please go to the session that matches what is indicated on your badge, and then we will rotate accordingly. On your badge, you've been assigned a group either A, B, C, or D. A will start in the Victoria Falls Ballroom. B will start in the Angel Falls Ballroom. C will start in the Niagara Falls Ballroom, and D will start in the Lake Michigan, which is around the corner. I do not know which one. My apologies. We will not see you again here until tomorrow morning, so a few items I would like to highlight. Our sessions this afternoon are brought to you by Northbridge Financial Corporation, and thank you for the sweet treats during the sessions this afternoon. Tonight is our trade show and hospitality night. Yeah! Woo! This is happening at the Fallsview Casino. Please let us know if you have any questions or need directions. There should be signage, but a lot of us execs have been there before, so we will be more than happy to show you the way. This starts at 6 p.m. It ends at 10 p.m. We look forward to seeing you all there. I can assure you that you do not want to miss this, and I know I've said it many times before, bring your business cards. Network, network, network. There is dinner also included, so definitely make sure to be there. We will see you tomorrow for our exec panel and the final day of the event. Looking forward to it. Enjoy, guys. See you soon.
We are gonna put the walls down again, so if I can ask everybody to just grab a coffee, there's gonna be a sweet treat if you want it, and we'll get set up.